Thank you for joining me for another episode of A White Woman in Distress. This podcast is dedicated to raising awareness for missing children, teens, and adults who have disappeared under heartbreaking circumstances. My mission is to spread the word, keep their stories alive, and help bring these missing loved ones back home. It's time for us to come together as a community and recognize that not every missing person receives the same level of attention. Overlooked cases often involve marginalized groups, including Indigenous people, people of color, members of the LGBTQ plus community, runaway teens, and homeless individuals. These groups face unique challenges, from systematic racism and media bias to jurisdictional issues and social stigma. As a result, their disappearances are often under-investigated and lack the attention that they so desperately deserve, because anyone that's missing deserves the same amount of attention as every other case. Indigenous women and girls, for example, are frequently overlooked in missing persons cases due to systematic racism and jurisdictional challenges. Similarly, cases involving people of color and members of the LGBTQ plus community often receive less media attention and resources. We cannot forget runaway teens, homeless individuals, and other adults with mental illnesses who are often seen as less urgent cases or assumed to have disappeared voluntarily. These differences highlight the urgent need for systematic change, including better policies, data collection, and coordination between law enforcement agencies. But it also calls for greater community involvement. Grassroots organizations, advocacy groups, and volunteers are stepping up where resources fall short, working to raise awareness and push for legislative action. We have to work together to bring these missing people home and to keep people from stealing our children, our family members, etc. People who are marked as voluntary runaways receive less attention because they're seen as voluntary, and at that point they don't really look for them. But we as a community can help to bring everyone home. You don't have to put yourself in harm's way just to help. Anonymous tips can be made, and they can make a world of difference. Our ultimate goal is to bring everyone home safely. Families deserve closure, and every missing person deserves to be found. Please be aware that content discussed in this episode may include violence, sexual assault, or murder, which some find distressing. Listener discretion is advised. Today, we're going to be diving into one of the longest unsolved cases in American history, the mysterious disappearance of Steven Craig Damman. Steven's case dates all the way back to October 31st, 1955, in East Meadow, New York. It's a heart-wrenching story, one that reminds us of how tragedy can strike when you least expect it, which is why I say in every episode that it can happen to anyone. Steven was just a toddler. He was over 2 years old when he disappeared without a trace. So let's talk about what happened that day and how we even got to where we are. So Steven Craig Damman was born December 15th, 1952, making him over 2 years old at the time of his disappearance. He was a small boy with blonde hair, blue eyes, standing about 3 feet 2, and weighing just about 32 pounds. Like any 2-year-old, Steven loved candy, and October 31st, 1955, he was eating a bag of jelly beans while standing beside his baby sister's carriage outside of a supermarket in East Meadow, Long Island. His mother, Marilyn, had left him and his sister outside for only a few minutes while she went inside to just buy a loaf of bread. This was a common practice at the time, and other mothers had also left their children outside while they shopped. But when Marilyn came back outside, both Steven and the carriage were gone. Now, what makes this case even more perplexing, mysterious, is that Steven's sister, Pamela, was found safe just a few blocks away, still in her carriage. But Steven, however, had just vanished. Despite the extensive search, Steven was never seen again. Now, I understand it was a different time. I just don't like the fact that people were leaving their kids outside of grocery stores to go shopping. Now I know in different countries that it is a common practice to leave your children outside because there isn't space for strollers and whatnot. However, that's so scary. My anxiety would never. I would have to carry both of them at the same time and figure out how to get the loaf of bread back to the front, because I couldn't imagine trying to leave a over 2-year-old to watch a baby in a stroller outside, even if I just went in for 2 seconds. Like, I wouldn't be able to. However, I know at the time, multiple people felt safe leaving their children outside of establishments. But in today's time, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. Back to the story. His mother, Marilyn, had left him and his sister outside for only a few minutes while she went inside the store to buy bread. This was a common practice at the time, which is still super wild to me. At the time of his disappearance, Steven was dealing with some serious health issues. He was undergoing treatment for a growth on his kidney and suffered from anemia. He needed daily medication, including iron supplements and vitamins. So in addition to the fear and anxiety any parent would feel when their child goes missing, Steven's parents had the added worry of whether he was receiving his necessary treatment or not, because whoever took him obviously didn't know that he was on medication at the time. Just like he wouldn't have, well, he may have been able to tell them what was going on, but he may not have even been able to tell them that he needed medicine. Steven also had some distinguishing characteristics, which he had a small scar under his chin, a mole-like birthmark on his right calf, and a healed fracture on his left arm. His mother described him as a mama's boy, a quiet, gentle child who was not just one to wander off. Steven also walked with his toes turned out, which would have been noticeable to anyone watching him, which I'm wondering if he was just bow-legged, and none of the articles I read just said bow-legged, but maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. It's just weird that he walked that way. By November 1st, 1955, the search for Steven had become massive. Over 1,000 people, including law enforcement officers and civilians, were involved. They were combing through the area just to find this little boy. But tragically, no solid evidence ever emerged. Steven had seemed to just vanish into thin air. There were rumors, tips, and eyewitness accounts, but nothing concrete. One witness claimed to have seen 6 people pick up the boy from outside the supermarket, but that lead didn't go anywhere. And if they picked him up, they also had to pick up his sister, but then why was she found a few blocks away, still in her stroller? The FBI declined to take the case over initially, citing that there wasn't enough evidence to suggest a federal crime had occurred. And just like that, the trail went cold. Which, rude, first off. Rude, because the FBI was called for a reason. I don't necessarily think that the police officers were like, oh, let's call the FBI and get them in on our jurisdiction. When, in fact, I feel like that's the last thing that they do is to call in the feds. But that's just me. In late November, something strange happened. Steven's parents received a series of ransom letters from a college student at Queens College, demanding increasing amounts of money for Steven's safe return. First, the student asked for $3,000, then $10,000, and finally $14,000. Steven's parents tried to comply, but it turned out that the student was just an opportunist. He had no connection to Steven's disappearance and was merely trying to take advantage of a desperate situation, which is absolutely wild. There is no reason anyone should act like this for any reason. You shouldn't pretend to be somebody's kidnapper or somebody's murderer or somebody's lost child just because you need money. That's definitely not how it works. Those people are definitely trash, pieces of trash, and they deserve nothing. And they get everything that's coming to them thanks to karma. And after his family had suffered these just devastating letters, this, in fact, whole situation that they were in was a devastating blow to them. Not only had they lost their son, but now they were being victimized by a cruel hoax. There were theories that emerged over the years. One of the most notable was that Steven might have been the boy in the box, also known as American's photo dog. There were theories that emerged over the years. One of the most notable was that Steven might have been the boy in the box, also known as America's unknown child. A small boy found dead in a cardboard box in Philadelphia in 1957. The similarities between the two boys were striking. Both were blonde and blue-eyed, and both had certain scars. But, crucially, the boy in the box did not have a healed fracture on his arm, as Steven did. Furthermore, Steven's footprints taken when he was a baby didn't match those of the unidentified boy. In 2003, to put the theory to rest once and for all, The police compared the DNA of the unidentified boy, dog, in 2003. To put the theory to rest for once and for all, the police compared the DNA of the unidentified boy with the DNA from Steven's sister, and it was conclusively proven that Steven was not the boy in the box. The case received more media attention in 2009 when a man from Michigan actually came forward and he was claiming to be Steven Damman. He believed that he was the missing boy and had been raised by someone else. However, after the DNA testing, it was revealed that he was not Steven. This, once again, brought attention to the case, but ultimately led nowhere. So, where does that exactly leave us today? Well, unfortunately, despite the best efforts of law enforcement, the media, and the public, there is still very little evidence to indicate Steven's fate. His case remains unsolved to this day, nearly 70 years later. Steven's parents eventually divorced, and his father moved back to Iowa and remarried. His mother, Marilyn, now lives in Missouri. Steven's family continues to hold out hope for answers, but the truth remains elusive. It's cases like this that serve as a somber reminder that some disappearances may never fully be explained. Even with advances in technology and renewed interest in cold cases, there's still countless families out there that are waiting for closure. If you or anyone you know has any information about the disappearance of Steven Craig Damman, please contact local authorities, or you can contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I have read a whole bunch of different theories as to what might have happened to him, and they're all really sad. I wouldn't point fingers in this case because it wasn't like this was a mom who just said, okay, I'll be right back. No, everybody was doing it at the time. Everybody was leaving their kids outside of places or leaving them home alone. So I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just saying that somebody picked this little boy up and they probably picked up his sister. And as soon as they realized she was maybe crying or she was causing too much attention to them, maybe they just left her in the stroller and they were like, you know what? We're going to just take the boy. He's quiet. Whereas this baby's just screaming. So we're just going to leave the baby, which to me makes the most sense as to why they left her and why they took him, especially if he wasn't making sounds or crying or trying to run away, whatever the case may be. I also want to say thank you for listening to A White Woman in Distress. If you want to support our mission of bringing attention to these forgotten cases and newer cases to spread awareness, please subscribe, share, and leave a review on any platform. We're on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify. So please let me know what I can do to make this better. Until next time, stay safe and vigilant. And as always, if you see something, say something and do something.